Former White House residents aren't the only campaign surrogates in high demand this cycle, especially in the state of Ohio, where, as Time magazine reports, Democrats want their Senator, Sherrod Brown, to turn out for them, maybe even more so than Presidents Obama or Biden. And he joins me now, Democratic Senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown. Senator, thanks for joining us on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
2 days out, where are your anxiety levels? How you feeling?
Well, I heard you talking a minute ago. I guess we're all anxious leading up. I just feel like Democrats are on the right side of issues. We talk about workers. We talk about the dignity of work. It's what people want to know, that we're on their side, and elections are always about who's on your side. And in Ohio, it's Tim Ryan and Nan Whaley for governor and our three candidates for the Supreme Court. So I feel good about where we are. It's going to be a long 3 days, though.
Do you think Tim Ryan made a good decision in distancing himself to a certain extent from the president, considering that president's approval ratings, especially in a state like Ohio?
Well, I think Tim rightly keeps the focus on the difference between him and J.D. Vance. And the best way to do that is to talk about the dignity of work, which he does, which was a term that I've used for years, that I inherited, I guess, from Pope Leo XIII and then Dr. King, who always wove together worker rights and civil rights, human rights, voting rights. And I think Tim focusing on that has been the way to run this race. And it's a down to the wire, what's going to happen with turnout to decide this race kind of race.
Okay, let's talk about you being a vote whisperer. And here's how Time magazine puts it. The honorific came without an ounce of irony Tuesday afternoon from the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor. The vote whisperer, Sherrod Brown, is the Democrats' unicorn, and his political DNA rivals anything theorized in Jurassic Park. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I guess it was a nice article. My reaction is I'm out all the time for Tim Ryan and Nan Whaley and congressional races, Greg Landsman in Cincinnati, Marcy Kaptur, Amelia Sykes race. We actually I think we're going to pick up a net gain of House seats in Ohio in spite of the national trend, even though we've been badly redistricted in Ohio. I mean, the Republicans have clearly rigged this state. We have essentially 3-1 Republican dominance of state rep, state senate, and Congress because they have done that. They've rigged the system redistricting against even the Republican courts in this state. But we persevere, and as I said, I feel pretty good about where we are and where we're going because we're focusing on people's lives. How do we make people's lives better? And workers and veterans and consumers, we've delivered in Washington on that, and we're going to continue to.
I get it, Senator. You don't want to make the story about yourself, so appreciate the pivot there. Can we talk a little bit about economic policy, right? Because we're looking at Fed Chair Jerome Powell continuing to increase the Fed rates. I know you've been critical of that, and you say this: we must avoid having our short-term advances in a strong labor market overwhelmed by the consequences of aggressive monetary actions to decrease inflation, especially when the Fed's actions do not address its main drivers. If not the interest rate increases, what do you think should be happening? What are the main drivers here?
Well, first of all, I remind the Fed every week that they have a dual mandate from Congress and from the White House, a dual mandate of growing jobs and fighting inflation, not just fighting inflation. So I remind them sometimes one-on-one, sometimes through the media. I don't lobby them, but I remind them their responsibility is to grow jobs as they fight inflation. Our responsibility in Congress is to take on those who have stoked inflation, and that's the oil industry and the drug companies and the meat packers and the international shippers who have used the pandemic to jack up prices. I mean, look at oil company profits, look at drug company profits over the last couple of years. And if we had more votes in the Senate, if we had 52 or 3 votes and could eliminate the filibuster, we could go after, we've already gone after the oil companies and drug companies with some success through the Inflation Reduction Act. We could go after them on excess profits, on prohibiting stock buybacks, and all the things these corporate leaders, these corporations have done to fleece the American public. You know, inflation's high all over the world. That doesn't make a voter and man Ohio or Toledo, Ohio feel better, but it does say to me that the oil companies and the drug companies, especially in Wall Street, have driven much of this inflation, and we go after them as Democrats.
You talk about what Democrats have done, what they've accomplished over the last 2 years while President Biden has been in the White House. You talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. We can talk about infrastructure as well. Do you feel as if Ohio voters understand the impact of that legislation? They feel as if those things were in their favor. They understand what Democrats have gotten done.
Never enough, and that's our fault for not talking about it enough. The Democrats' problem, in part, is we passed the infrastructure bill, the strongest Buy America provisions ever in American law, and then we always move to the next bill, talking about taking on the drug companies, negotiating drug prices, and we do that, accomplish then the next thing. So I think a year from now, the voters will surely know the successes we've had. We've got to remind them now. I'm spending a lot of time talking to veterans. I've been to 15 counties in the last 3 weeks talking to veterans about the PACT Act. We're going to help these veterans. Republicans tried to kill it. Many Republicans in the Senate think never complain about spending more on defense, but they complain about how much it costs to take care of soldiers and veterans when they come home. I'm going to remind them the PACT Act to make sure those veterans who are soldiers who are exposed to these football field-sized burn pits get the kind of care they should get when they return at the Chillicothe or the Dayton or the Cleveland Hospital or the Seebach in Mansfield or Zanesville.
Ohio Senator